why chest up is a pretty lousy cue to help people have better squat technique. Now, one of my lifters was asking me about this today, and they had heard that chest up was what they needed to think about when they're squatting so that they don't fall forward. And you've probably heard many coaches and many lifters yell chest up when somebody's trying to squat heavy. And it makes sense because when we squat, we don't want our chest to cave towards the floor. That's one of the most common squat faults that we see, especially under near maximal weights. But the problem is the way most people get their chest up is what's actually making their squat fall apart. Now, keep in mind, when we're squatting heavy, there are two things that we want to have happen no matter what type of squat you're doing, no matter what your leverages are, whether you do high bar, low bar, whatever it is. We want to make sure that we have good core bracing, and we want to make sure we have good mid-foot balance. Now, what are those two things? Good core bracing, meaning that our ribs and our pelvis are stacked on top of each other. So we have good connection between our upper body and our lower body. When we squat like this, it lets us create a lot of intra-abdominal pressure so we can apply a lot of force to heavy weights. It also lets our hips move the right way to make sure that we can hit depth without our weight shifting forward onto our toes. And that leads into what is midfoot balance. Midfoot balance means even weight distribution across your entire foot. When you look at any good squatter, they're not squatting up on their toes, they're not leaning back on their heels, and they're not having too much pressure go inward or outward on their feet. They're having their entire foot connected to the ground. The reason for that is, again, so you can hit depth, not cut your depth high or fall forward while trying to hit depth. And also, so you have good force pushing into the ground. A way I like to explain to my lifters is if I'm doing push-ups, would I rather do my push-up with my full hand on the ground or up on my fingertips? Obviously, doing push-ups up on my fingertips would be much harder. The same thing kind of happens if we are losing our balance one way or the other while we're squatting. You don't have your full foot onto the ground to push. And if you're moving maximal weights, you want to be able to apply as much force into the ground as possible. Now, knowing those two things, core bracing and midfoot balance, let's talk about why getting your chest up in a more traditional sense is actually ruining those two things for your squat. Now, a lot of times people think in order to get their chest up when they squat, what they have to do is they have to arch their entire back, really puff their chest up and out, and get their lower back tight. I certainly know when I was getting taught to squat early on in my powerlifting career, that's what I was taught. The problem with that is, number one, it undoes your core brace because your ribs go up and out, your pelvis goes down and out, your ribs go up and forward, your pelvis goes down and out, and when you lose that connection between your rib cage and your pelvis, you can no longer brace your abdominal muscles. You can't take in a big breath of air and kind of get that Valsalva maneuver that we want to have when we're squatting heavy. Also, it shifts your weight onto the front of your feet. Just stand in your squat stance, arch your back as much as you can, and you'll feel your weight automatically shifts to the front of your feet. If I do this with heavy weight on my back, and then I go to squat down, I'm either going to move too far forward and my heels are going to come off the ground, or I'm subconsciously going to know that at some point I need to sit my hips back more to get my weight balanced over my feet. And then what happens is everything just kind of curls into a ball anyways, leading to the same problem that you were trying to avoid. So how do we actually get our chest up without lifting our chest up? It's not that easy. That's why squatting is pretty challenging, but I'm going to show you how I think the best way is to do it. So when I go to set up to squat, I want to use my chin and my upper back to get my torso as tight as possible. This goes for whether you're high bar, low bar, anywhere in between. So when I first set up for my squat, I want to squeeze my shoulder blades together really tight and pull my elbows down into my back pocket. So my entire upper back, my lats, my erectors are all working together to create a shelf for the bar to sit on. Very, very similar to the way I would set up my shoulders and my upper back to bench, just without arching my back. So keep in mind, I'm squeezing together here. I'm not arching my back like this. So once I have my shoulders set, then I'm going to take my chin. I'm going to push it back through the bar like I'm trying to make a double chin. I don't care if your head is slightly up, slightly down, where you're looking with your eyes. Just wherever your head is, you need to push your chin back through the bar. If I do that, I'm going to get super tight through my traps, my entire upper back, and I have a really good shelf for the bar to sit on. This is chest up. That's what I think of in the squat. Whether I stay really upright, whether I lean forward, I have all this tightness in my upper back, and I'm not going to lose my upper back position or have the bar roll around on me. Now that I've got all that set, I can set my core position by tucking my hips under slightly, bracing my abs nice and tight, and then I just pick the bar out of the rack, keep all that tension during my walkout, and I'm exactly where I need to be. So my upper back is nice and tight, which is going to keep my chest up. My ribs are down on top of my pelvis, so I have a good core position that I can breathe into. I take that breath, then I initiate into the squat, whether you're somebody who likes to sit back into their squat a lot, whether you're somebody who more just pushes their knees out and forward, doesn't really matter. I hold the same position with my chin in my upper back, keeping my chest up, my ribs and my pelvis on top of each other so I can brace properly. Big air, hold it tight, descend, and then as long as the weight on the bar isn't too heavy for my abilities, I should be able to hold my torso position in what is going to look like keeping your chest up. The traditional way of thinking of chest up is probably what's fucking up everything in your squat. So if you think less about chest up and more just about using your upper back and your chin to stabilize your torso, your ribs and your pelvis to stabilize everything below that, everything about your squat will probably fall into place.